Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jeff Wallace here, and welcome to another episode of Chasing Elephants. Man, it has been an incredible, busy, hectic summer. When Brent and I get back together here, when you have both of us here in the studio in a couple of weeks, we'll definitely unpack all of the craziness of the summer. But I just want to tell you, it has been wild. We have had incredible ministry that we've seen with our SLU 101. We did 5 weeks in Orlando. We did a week in San Antonio. And then we had an incredible SLU 201 in Washington, D.C. As you've already seen some of the amazing sessions that we've had. We actually ended with my brother last week. In our last week episode, you got a chance to just get a glimpse into SLU 201 as we really help students to learn how to think, how to dream, how to lead, but also think about their leadership in a very critical standpoint as far as it relates to how can they be an influencer in the public square. And so it's an incredible time. 1,000 students in this wonderful Crystal City Gateway Marriott Hotel there in Washington, D.C. So we had SLU 201. Well, unlike our normal summers, we would typically go from SLU 201 to SLU 301. But this year, because of this little small event called the Olympics that was happening in Paris, we had to move SLU 301 up a whole 10 days beforehand. And so it actually happened before SLU 201, but we had students, several hundred students had an opportunity to go to Paris, London, Oxford, and Normandy. It was incredible, guys. And so we have been busy here in the SLU shop. We're kind of getting back into the swing of things. I know many of you youth pastors and youth leaders and church leaders and students, this is that time. This is August, right? This is when everything kind of gets back into the swing of things as you're preparing to go back to college or high school or into, your ministry calendar or just back into the workplace after the summer. And so I know on behalf of my brother Brent, we pray that you guys had a very productive and fruitful summer. And I know it's been a lot. And so we ourselves are kind of getting back into the swing of things here. We've been praying for you. I know you guys have been praying for us. And so thank you for all of the prayers and the well wishes. And so here's what the next couple of weeks are going to look like for us when it relates to the schedule of the podcast, So I want to really kind of reset and reshape, kind of our mindsets around the idea of how do we maximize our effectiveness and efficiency as a leader. So I got a two-part leadership podcast I want to share with you this week and next week. And then after that, my brother Brent and I will be back together. The band's getting back together as we're really going to tap into some incredible content and topics. There's a lot going on in our country. There's a lot going on in the world of local church ministry. And so we want to really kind of engage a lot of those topics in real time. And so I hope and pray that you will join us over the next couple of weeks because we're really excited about what the Lord is going to do. But what I want to do is just really kind of set our mind or reshape our minds as leaders on a couple of leadership perspectives and ideas. Now, many of you know I received my doctorate in organizational leadership. And so for me, leadership principles, practices, rules, tools, insights, ideas, they really are things that I love to talk about, things I love to really kind of stretch leaders on, adult leaders as well as student leaders on. And so I wanted to do this particular episode. I wanted to kind of talk around this idea of what I call the 4 leadership behaviors. There's 4 type of behaviors that many leaders will have or should have if they want to be effective in their leadership influence and how they leverage their influence, whether it's in a marketplace work environment, whether it is in a local church environment, if it's in a nonprofit, a Christian school, or on a college and high school campus. And so how do we leverage our leadership abilities and capacity, or even even not even leverage, but maybe even expand. How do we expand our leadership uh, uh, capacity and ability? So what are some behaviors that we believe are needed in order to do that? And so I want to start off by, as we talk about leadership, to just do a little bit of recap for some, or maybe an introduction of a very simplistic definition of leadership. That, I mean, if you look up leadership in a Webster dictionary, or you study leadership, there's a million and one different variations of the definition of leadership and what is leadership. But I love Peter Northouse, who is a scholar that really kind of gives a very general definition of leadership and what it is. And Northouse would suggest that leadership is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals or an individual to achieve a common goal. Again, let me say that again. It is the process where an individual influences a group of individuals or an individual to achieve a common goal. And so Northouse would suggest in a very broad stroke way that leadership is just one's ability to influence someone else or a group of individuals. But then Northouse would go on and really kind of funnel down this whole idea of leadership. Is he would say, and I agree, that influence is the central process of leadership. Why? Because it is the ability to affect or impact others. That's why, as we share with students from across the country and around the world, whether it's here domestically in the States, whether we are at SLU 301 or 401, or we're there in Egypt with our friends there in Egypt, we're always talking about the importance of leading through the lens of having a healthy biblical worldview. Why? Because if Northouse is saying that leadership is one's ability to influence a group of individuals or an individual to achieve a common goal, and then he would go on, and again, these are from the lens of a secular perspective, and then he would go on to say that influence is the central process, then one would suggest in our context, in Brent and I's context, that, hey, we're as individuals who are unapologetic about our faith, we're saying, hey, it's imperative that you marry and merge your biblical worldview with this definition of leadership if you're going to leverage your influence and capacity as a Christian leader who is leading others, right? Because we talk about influence being the central process, because it impacts others, then we want to make sure that we're influencing people for the glory of God. We're influencing people in a way where we're teaching them how to think, how to dream, how to lead, at the feet of Jesus, and also through the lens of Scripture. So the reason why I want to say that is because a lot of things that we're going to talk about, these 4 behaviors, you can look at them from a secular perspective. I hate using that word, but, for the sake of this conversation, from a secular perspective. But I think it's important that we understand that everything that we're talking about, we're looking at this through the lens of Scripture. And here is what Northouse would go on to say. My final idea from Northouse is he would say, as it relates to the people that we as leaders are influencing with our leadership, he would say people want leaders, regardless of title, who listen to and understand their needs and who can relate to their circumstances. And so that's what people want. They want people who can relate to them. Because notice Northouse is not saying that your title dictates your leadership. He doesn't say your role or responsibilities of whatever organization or nonprofit that you're part of, or even if you're just a student in school, that doesn't dictate whether you're a leader or not. It is your willingness to influence people in a proper manner, and a very cohesive manner, and a competent manner, because people want leaders who they can listen to and who understands their needs. And so I would say, when we think about different leaders. So I want you to see, ladies and gentlemen, I'm kind of funneling this conversation down. So first, we talked about, or not really talked about, but kind of gave a general definition of leadership and influence and what the people want. Now, the second thing I think is important to understand is that all of us, we kind of are in three different categories as far as leader types, like meaning that all of us are like one out of these three that I'm going to share with you types of leaders. And we do this a lot when we are in 101 and we talk about the DISC personality profile. I love teaching that session. But we talk about, your temperament and your wiring. But ultimately, we're trying to get students to understand that we all have different type of personalities, but we also, in the same vein, we have different leadership wirings or ways that we would say, man, this is what I am good at. And so there are three types of leaders that really, you can break them down into more than three, but just for the sake of this conversation, there are really three types of leaders that I really want us to identify. And I would love for you to think about, as I'm giving these leaders, I would love for you to think about which one of these three are you. And so the first is simply what I would say is a strategic leader. A strategic leader. A strategic leader is just someone who's a big picture visionary. Typically, a strategic leader is that CEO, that president, that lead pastor, someone who can walk in the room and say, hey, here's a blank sheet of paper, but this is what I envision for this blank piece of paper. They can come in and just cast vision and inspire the troops and let them know, hey, we are going to go and do it. This is what I sense for us in this season. This is what I sense for us moving forward. They're the strategic big picture leaders. And so the first type of leader is a strategic leader. They're the visionaries. But then the second type of leader that's out there is what we call our tactical leaders. And these terms, by the way, really are leaders that, you can kind of get these terms. These terms are adopted from our military. Our military will use these types of leaders or definitions or descriptions of different type of leaders depending upon their role in the military. And so you got the strategic leader, but then you have the tactical leader. And tactical leaders are very systematic. They break down the big pictures into easy, doable steps. And so whereas a strategic leader comes in like, hey, we're going to take the city, right? Well, you need that tactical leader who can take that amazing big picture vision and put it into steps and doable processes. They're the ones who really kind of are what I would say is the glue that keeps the vision together, right? And in our organization, as many of you have followed us, you know that Nikki Hoffpower, our COO, she's really that strong tactical leader. Brent as a visionary or Dr. J as a visionary can come in and be like, hey guys, this is what we want to do. And then I love Nikki's response, always. She's like, okay, let's talk this back. Let's break this down a little bit. What does this mean here, and how are we going to do that? And when you say we're going to do this, do you mean now, tomorrow, next year, next week? So that tactical leader is that one who really can kind of take the vision and in a very systematic way break it down. They're very good at articulating what the strategic leader said, how they can really kind of put a system around that. And like I said, Nikki is phenomenal with that, where she's really good at helping break the big picture down. But then after you go from your strategic leader to your tactical leader, then you have the third leader, which is an operational leader. And your operational leader, they're the boots on the ground individuals. They're the ones that's dedicated to getting the job done. These are the men and women who, after the tactical leader has asked all of the significant questions to the strategic leader, and then have had an opportunity to kind of help systemize it, if I can say it that way, put a system around it, if you will, then now typically the tactical leader will articulate the system to the operational leaders. So then again, I use the example of Nikki. So Brett comes in the room, Dr. J comes in the room with a meeting. This we're going to do. Nikki Tactical leader asks the questions, puts it in the system. She loves Excel spreadsheets. She lives by Excel spreadsheets. And so it gets Excel-defied. That's not a word, I know that, but that's my word I'm using to describe Nikki Hoff-Power. And so she'll put it in this great system and this grid. And then now she's articulating this to the operational leaders who are saying, okay, now this teammate, you need to do this. This teammate, okay, you take this. This teammate, you take this. Now, and those operational leaders, they're the go get it done individuals. They're very, very important to the organization because they're the men and women who execute the vision that has been given by the strategic leader. So you see, for the most part, we all kind of tap dance into one of these three leaders. One, again, strategic. Two, we may be a tactical leader. Three, an operational leader. Now, is it possible to overlap in some of the three? Absolutely, yes, you can. I would say I probably lean a lot in the strategic and tactical aspect of it. But I don't mind. I love being an operational leader too. We got to go get it done. Let's go get it done. And so there are situations, circumstances that you may be a hybrid, if you will, of the three. And so it's not that you have to, please don't hear me say you have to be just one and that's it. You can't be another. That's not it. And so we can kind of hover into two of the buckets in our roles and responsibility, or even just our wiring or how we love things. And so we see, I want you to follow the progression. I promise we're going to get into some behaviors here. But you see, we're talking about, here is what Northhouse gives as a definition of leadership. We see what we can learn from our military on three types of leaders. Now let's take that, what we know, and let's break it down into four essential behaviors that we would say that is needed in order for us to be the leaders that God's called us to be. And so as a tactical leader or a strategic leader or operational leader who understands what being a leader and influencer for the glory of God looks like, what are some behaviors that we need to have? Well, the first lesson is we need to master the art of self-leadership. We need to master the art of self-leadership. I love what Luke 16:10 says. It says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Whoever can be trusted with little can be trusted with much. Where much is given, much is required, right? And so if you're going to lead others well, then you must first master the art of leading yourself well. And so how are you leading yourself well? How are you being intentional about your time, your talent, your gifting? How are you cultivating the gifts within you? Because I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that we as leaders can't take people places we've not been ourselves. So until we master the art of self-leadership, until we really are stewarding our own leadership well, we'll never, ever, ever be able to effectively or efficiently lead others. So it's important that we make a plan in our lives. We're intentional about having some balance. I'm not even going to go there with the balance and the margin, because I know that's a big old topic of conversation with a lot of leaders, and especially if you've read a John Mark Homer book, and so listen, we have different perspectives, and maybe Brent and I will unpack that a little bit later on in one of our future episodes. But the whole idea, I want you to understand, one of the great behaviors we need as leaders is learning the art of self-leadership. How do we master, rather, the art of self-leadership? Because if we want to be trusted with much, then we first have to make sure that we can handle the little that has been given to us. The second behavior that I would suggest is needed is mastering the art of positivity. All right. So mastering the art of positivity. Clay Stroggins, I love this. Clay Stroggins is a fantastic leader. He wrote the book, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. Is one of my favorite books, and great concepts and ideas. Many of the things that I'm even talking about here, he talks about a little bit in his book. But Clay Scroggins, he would say this. He says, leaders who bring a trust-filled, hope-filled, forward-thinking attitude every day can change any team dynamic. I love that. Let me say it again. He says, leaders who bring a trust-filled, number one, a hope-filled, number two, a forward-thinking, number three, attitude every day can change any dynamic. So when we talk about the behavior, we want to master the art of positivity. How are we being positive? What type of energy are we bringing to the team? Now, that doesn't mean that you go into your team being fake. It doesn't mean that you go in there and be unauthentic. I'm not saying that. But you want to make sure that you are that, the picture of positivity, that calm in the midst of leadership storms, and so I believe that your head, because I think it's head, heart, and hustle and hands. I always say head, heart, and hustle, but it's head, heart, and hands on this one. Your head has to be in the place where your mind is right. You have the right attitude when you're coming into your team. So your head has to be right. Your heart has to be right. There has to be one, if you're under someone, your heart has to be right from the standpoint. There has to be a level of humility towards authority. But then first and foremost, that's probably number two, the humility towards authority. That's number two. But number one is your heart has to be connected to God, right? And so when we are men and women who our hearts are connected after God, then we begin to mimic that or portray that with the people that we are leading or interacting with. I'll always say something people have heard me say is that, your vertical relationship, meaning your vertical relationship with God, really dictates and determines your horizontal relationship with others. So it's about the head, making sure your mind's in it, you got a good attitude. It's about heart, connecting with God so that you can connect with others. But it's also about hands. It's being able to really promote unity with the people that you're doing life with, you're doing ministry with, you're leading with, that you are extending a helping hand, that you are being a good teammate, and so that idea of mastering the art of positivity, being positive, is so important because it really does impact the dynamic of every team. But the third behavior, I would say, is the willingness to think critically. The willingness to think critically. I think it's so important that we understand the value of critical thinking when we're in the midst of situations. Now, in my humble opinion, there is a difference between critical thinking, being able to analyze a situation so that you can create the proper outcome or come up with a proper outcome. Critical thinking is one's ability to reason, to question, to really analyze a situation properly so that they can make a sound judgment decision on things. So there's a difference between thinking critically about things versus being critical of things. And so we're not talking about being critical. We're not talking about coming in and always pointing out, being Debbie Downer, or, pointing out things that are always wrong with the team. No. That's being critical. Now, please hear me say this. It is imperative that we're always, as we say here at SLU, we're challenging the process. Yes. But what I'm talking about in this context is I'm talking about our ability to think critically about things, our ability to not criticize things per se, but to observe things in a way and offer a proper perspective on how we can get better in the area. So being a critical thinker in the context of your team And for what we're talking about today is one's ability to give perspective and provide input on how things can be improved. And so one of the things I'll always do when I'm debriefing with a team that I'm managing is I always ask 4 questions. I'll say, okay, we looked at this event and we just had this event. Here are my 4 questions. What went right? What went wrong? What was confusing? And what was missing? Because we want to think critically about things. We want to make sure that we're really getting the proper perspective of where things are based on what we just experienced or what we're walking into. And so your willingness to think critically is a very important behavior. I'll say this, and I just kind of alluded to it about how we see things here and how we go through things here at SLU is, critical thinking is all about challenging the process until you get the best results. That's really a core value and belief for us here at SLU. We want to always challenge the process. Why? Because we want to make sure that we're getting the best results. And so, number 3, that willingness to think critically about things. But then number 4 is the unwillingness to be a passive leader. The unwillingness to be a passive leader. Like, I'm not willing to be this just passive, whatever, kind of laissez-faire kind of leader. No. I'm going to be passionate about the job that I have. I'm going to be passionate about being the best version of myself. I'm going to be passionate about the goals and objectives that are in front of me. I'm going to be passionate about what God has entrusted me to steward as a leader, and I'm not going to be passive. I'm not going to just kind of let things be. And so I think it's important that we really kind of check our hustle at the door, if I could say it that way. Is like, hey, as leaders, I'm not saying that you are overbearing and over aggressive, but I think that if we're going to be excellent in all things, we have to reject and reject the idea and the attitude of being like passive as leaders. Just like, oh, well, it's all right. Because in my humble opinion, I believe being passive actually breeds a spirit of mediocrity. When we're passive, it kind of just, we become very comfortable in mediocrity. So be unwilling to be passive in your leadership. So be a leader with that. Be a leader who's going to choose to take some initiative. Be a leader that will plan and prepare for what's to come. Be a leader who will respond to what's important, not to what's random, and stop wasting your time. Be a leader who won't waste your time, because your time is valuable and precious. I'm going to go through that just quickly again. I know I went through it really fast, but let me say this again. If you're going to be unwilling to be passive as a leader, you have to, number 1, be one who I'm going to choose to take the initiative. I'm going to be someone who I'm going to not wait for people to come and ask me to do something. I'm going to be a leader who takes the initiative and go and do something. And so I'm choosing to be a person who is a self-starter and take an initiative. Number 2, I am planning and I am preparing for what's to come. That's the difference between you being a leader who's reactive versus a leader who is proactive. And so I am planning and preparing for what's to come. And so it's important. You got to do that. As a leader who is asking the Lord every day, as leaders, we should be asking the Lord every day, Lord, give me the wisdom and discernment to know what's important versus what's random. Because sometimes we'll have team members who will come and just drop a lot of things at our lap. But you, as a discerning and wise leader who's thinking critically about things, you're figuring out, okay, you know what? I hear that. This is important, and so let me tackle this. But I hear that's random. That's really not something we need to do right now. Let's put this aside. Maybe we'll come back to it. Maybe we'll decide that's really not something that we need to be focusing on right now. So don't respond to what's random. Respond to what's important. And then 2, hey, listen, I think it's okay to say your time is valuable. So don't waste it, right? And so, man, listen, every hour that you have, every minute, every second that the Lord gives you breath in your lungs and the activity of your limbs, ladies and gentlemen, I just believe that we need to be intentional about stewarding our time well. So don't waste your time. But in order for you not to waste your time, it starts with you doing the work, with you being proactive with your life and your leadership and not reactive. And so those are, my 4 little behaviors that I would say I think are so important for you as a leader, and for me as a leader, for all of us as a leader, if we're going to maximize our leadership effectiveness and efficiency. So that is my time. I think I'll put a pin right there, and then we're going to come back next week and get a second part of our leadership podcast episodes. We're really trying to maximize the effectiveness and the efficiency of every leader. So this is about the leadership behaviors, and then we're going to look at leadership from a devotional standpoint next week. And so I hope you'll come back and listen to that podcast. As always, man, it is an honor and a joy to connect with you. And so wherever you are, whether you're driving in your car, you're at your desk listening, you're at home, you're at the gym working out, wherever, man, I just want to say on behalf of myself and Dr. Crow, thank you so much. And as always, we'd love for you to subscribe, man, share, like, all of that great stuff. Rate us 5 stars only, please. And so, but we want you to rate us, but also we love for you to follow our ministry. You can follow us, our organization, Student Leadership University, at SLU Lead, at SLU Lead. You can follow my brother Brent at Brent A. Crow, and you can always follow me at I am Jeff Wallace, Well, ladies and gentlemen, until next week, I pray that you will be very intentional about every moment of your life, that you will say, as the Lord has given me this moment to steward my life well, I'm going to be intentional about being the best version of myself. Until next week, God bless you. Peace.